Point. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur. What am I doing hosting this show? Fascinating. So we've got 3 great points for you guys. It's all roughly about heroism. Depends on your definition. The first one is going to be from Chase Madar. He has written the book, The Passion of Bradley Manning. Whether you think he's a hero or not is, of course, an open question that we'll discuss here. And then Philip Zimbardo is, of course, the world-renowned Stanford professor who is doing a project on heroism and what does it mean to be a hero. We'll discuss that as well. And then finally, we're going to discuss the Avengers, which are, of course, action heroes, superheroes, and whether there was a political message behind that movie. So, our panel today is an excellent one. Patrick Meighan is writer and popular animated sitcom Family Guy. I believe I've heard of that. And he was also arrested last year during the Occupy LA protests. Rock and roll. Nicely done. Shari Kuchenbecker is a research psychologist, assistant professor at Chapman University, and she's the author of Raising Winners, A Parent's Guide to Helping Kids Succeed on and Off the Playing Field. I'd kind of like to do a point on that. And then Kinsey Schofield is a correspondent for Young Hollywood and a recurring guest on Fox News Channel's Red Eye with Greg Gutfeld, and we won't haul that against you. Okay. All right. So let's get started. First point is sent in by Chase Madar. He is the author of The Passion of Bradley Manning, and he wants to talk about Bradley Manning, obviously.
Hi, my name is Chase Madar. I'm a civil rights attorney and the author of a new book, The Passion of Bradley Manning. Today, government secrecy is killing us. Washington classifies some 77 million documents a year, and we are still declassifying material from the presidency of James Madison over 200 years ago. Now, I don't think Madison himself would be much impressed with this appalling lack of transparency. After all, he's the guy who wrote that a popular government without popular information is but a prelude to a tragedy or a farce, or perhaps both. Pretty good description of our foreign policy the past 10 years. Now, when I say that government secrecy is killing us, I mean that quite literally. When the government deprives us, the people, of important information, we wind up making some poorly informed decisions, some of which have been catastrophically destructive, like the invasion of Iraq. The Iraq War has killed well over 100,000 Iraqis, 4,500 U.S. soldiers, all at a cost of close to $4 trillion. These are the wages in blood and money of extreme government secrecy. Which brings me to my point. Given the credible threat to our national security and to our freedom of such extreme government secrecy as we have now, why then is the Obama administration going after the whistleblowers and the truth tellers, prosecuting and or punishing such brave whistleblowers as Thomas Drake of the National Security Agency, Peter Van Buren of the State Department, and Private Bradley Manning of the U.S. Army? After all, aren't we better off as a nation knowing at least a little of the truth? Should it really be a crime to know what your government is doing? My name is Chase Madar. I'm the author of The Passion of Bradley Manning, and from New York City, that has been my point.
All right, so I'm very curious to discuss both these things. Secrets that the government needs to keep or keeps too much of, and Bradley Manning as well. Let's start on Bradley Manning for a second. Patrick, hero or not a hero?
Hero. And in fact, I don't know if I need to disclose this. I contribute some money to his legal defense. So,
well, yeah,
if
way
the
to get
ethics of the internet say that I need to say that now, then I'm saying that.
Right. Well, way to get yourself stopped at every airport. Nicely done. Okay.
I think that he's a hero because if, in fact, he did what he is alleged to have done, which of course is still like an open legal question, then he has already explained to us why he did it. He said, in these alleged chat logs with Adrian Lamo or whatever, however that name was pronounced, that, yeah, if he wanted to, cause harm to our country, he could have given it to one specific foreign nation, and they could have exploited that information specifically for the purpose of harming, our country and benefiting theirs. But he wanted this information to be out in the open because he was seeing what excessive secrecy, like Chase Madar just said, is doing to our republic, which is that it's strangling it. It's keeping us from knowing what's being done in our name with our tax dollars. I mean, in this country, the government is supposed to be us. But it can't be us if we don't know what it's doing in our name. So that's why I consider him a hero.
Now, I made the airport comment because a supporter of Bradley Manning actually gets stopped every time he comes back into the country.
That's
Immigration
right.
says,
and gets his laptop like seized and downloaded, and that's all legal.
Yeah, he had to sue to get it back. The Fourth Amendment apparently does not apply if you're coming back into the country, so they can seize anything anything they like and keep it for a long time. Kinsey, I'm curious on your perspective on Bradley Manning.
Well, I definitely wouldn't consider him a hero. I think, which we're going to discuss later, I think hero is a bigger term. I think that he might have given information that the government needed to see. However, it concerns me that he might have put other soldiers' lives in jeopardy with the way he did it. So I understand that his intentions were pure, but I would have never put our soldiers' lives in jeopardy the way he did.
Yeah. I don't think so. I think what puts our soldiers' lives in danger is sending them into a senseless war like Iraq, where 5,000 of them get killed. That's what puts them in danger. What he was saying is, look, this all the things the government is not telling you. And perhaps next time we should be a little bit more careful, for example, if we're going to go to a war with Iran, about all the terrible things that happen in war. For example, the helicopter strike, where we saw the journalists being killed. And when Samaritans came in to help the journalists and others that were killed on the ground, they were shot at as well.
Right.
Then people say war is hell. Right. So one of the things Bradley Manning was doing was saying, well, let's remember that because the government's trying to hide it from you.
And one of the fellow soldiers who was in that collateral murder video has come out in support of Bradley Manning and saying Bradley Manning was incredibly brave and courageous for doing what he did, and that Bradley Manning is a hero and he is a patriot. This is from one of the soldiers who went into one of the vans that was shot up by a helicopter from, a mile up to try and save some of the, I think there were children that were in there at the time. So. And the government, despite all the protestation that it has wanted to, has not been able to point to a single soldier, civilian, any person whose life has been in any way harmed as a result of what Bradley Manning revealed. So, of course, we can point to hundreds of thousands of lives that have been extinguished as a result of excessive government secrecy. And I consider, again, like Chase Madar, to be the war in Iraq, to be part of that, to be part of, a partial result of excessive government secrecy.
So, Shari, there has to be a balance here, right? Because we can't, I get why the government says, I can't have everybody decide to be a Bradley Manning on their own and release every classified information we have that they get their hands on, so they have to take some action, right? I think. I don't know. I want to get your view on it. The question is how much action and depending on the case, et cetera. Also, on the case of secrecy, we have to have some secrets. So how do you strike that balance?
I think that Bradley Manning is a really interesting case, and I'm not sure whether he's going to emerge as a hero, but I know he was definitely a person with a lot of challenges in his life. He'd been marginalized within the Army itself. He was experiencing what we classically call in social psychology the we-they. He apparently had been teased, and he was given a position where he had access to information. And we look at people who have a moral conscience, a sense that they are different from the organization. And I think that possibly, since he had been marginalized, inspired him to go ahead and take an action that other people who were within the nest, within the community, would have been afraid to do.
Kinsey, Daniel Ellsberg was never convicted and hence didn't have to go through any of the things that Bradley Manning is going through now. Not that Bradley Manning's even been convicted yet. I mean, spent so much time, solitary confinement, the stripping naked, et cetera, before they even charged him, which was so insane. But look, my view on it is, I get that you want to punish him, because you can't have everybody deciding to do this on their own, like I just said, but I would put a limit on it. And I would say, right now, the amount of time that he has served, I think, is more than ample, given that he might have done, and in our opinion, and in the opinions of a lot of people, a net positive. But even if you say it's not good enough, isn't the amount of time and the way that he's done it so far enough that we can say, all right, you've made your point, we get it, it's time to free him?
Is it time to free him? Oh, I mean, I totally agreed with everything you said. I was shaking my head vigorously over here. I do think that he has challenges, and I would like to see, I don't want to say I want to see him freed, but I would like to see him taken care of. I would like to see him to see a counselor, a therapist, because not everybody is releasing this information. Not all of these other soldiers are pursuing these actions. And yes, I don't think that war is necessary, but at the same time, why did this individual decide to pursue things the way that he did? Let's find that out. Let's cater to his needs. Let's figure out what's wrong with him.
I actually think that's an interesting point. I think the Ellsberg comparison is interesting too, because it shows, guys, that our society has changed so much. Because why did he feel the need to do this? Because the government is keeping everything secret, and we've got so many more secrets than we used to. And even President Obama said that he was going to be the most transparent president ever. Honestly, I think that's a joke.
The genesis for Bradley Manning, when he first decided that he needed to perhaps go extra legally with his, revelation of information, was when he was in Iraq and he was seeing U.S. troops assisting in the rounding up of basically Iraqi political dissidents and handing them over to Iraqi secret police to be tortured. And he got one of the flyers that these people were handing out, and it wasn't about we need jihad to upset this new Iraqi government. It was like this sort of philosophical treatise, like very sort of benign, kind of middle of the road political dissidents. And so he went to his superior and he said, hey, listen, I think we're making a mistake because we're handing people over to be tortured who really are just political opponents of the current regime and are in no way sort of engaged in violence. And his superiors basically said, shut the fuck up, Bradley Manning, go back to whatever it is your job is in the U.S. Army. And he sort of learned right then and there, like, okay, this is what whistleblowing or this is what going through the chain of command does, is it just sort of earns you a reprimand and you're told to shut up and go back to your knitting. So the fact that he then went from that to to exposing the information publicly that was being sort of like held away from us, and we're supposed to be the ones who are supposed to know and care about this stuff, doesn't make me go, what kind of sickness is he involved in? Like, how can we get him treatment and counseling? That makes me go, where do I find the right kind of metal to build a statue to Bradley Manning? Like, I'm serious. And like, and the other thing when I look at that is I don't want
Twitter with a vagina. That was my.
Who cares? I care so little. What I care is that war criminals get put in jail, not the people who expose the war crimes.
Right. I think that Kinsey's partly referring to the defense that Bradley Manning's team is putting forward, which I'm uncomfortable with. They're talking about that, he had psychological issues, et cetera. I wish they wouldn't do that defense. I wish they did the defense you're talking about, Patrick. Yeah. They think that it's a tougher legal defense, right?
Well,
but it's really important to the public to be able to say, no, this guy isn't a bad guy. This guy isn't disturbed. We're disturbed.
Well,
what the government is doing is disturbed.
What the government is doing is disturbing. Is when we talk about excessive secrecy, we're not even talking about excessive secrecy of things that like this can't get out because then our troops get put in danger. Like one of the WikiLeaks documents that got released is about Haiti, and it's about how in Haiti their minimum wage is $3 a day, and which is the smallest in the Western Hemisphere. And so Fruit of the Loom has their underwear made in Haiti. Well, the Haitian government is like, hey, let's raise our minimum wage to $5 a day. So Fruit of the Loom went and complained to the State Department, which then came back to the Haitian government and said, don't you dare raise your minimum wage to $5 a day. That's going to piss Fruit of the Loom off. And now, listen, I like Fruit of the Loom as much as anybody. It hugs my balls just fine. But explain to me how keeping that secret like protects our troops. Explain to me how our national security
It protects the government is what it does.
It protects very, very wealthy donors to people who run for office.
That's exactly right.
And
Sure.
Cenk, that's the point that I keep hearing us coming back around to. Patrick's trying to say that the government hasn't served Bradley Manning, but I think we have to step back in time. Let's go back in time maybe 2 years, 3 years. Remember, when he came into the military, it was don't ask, don't tell. And so he already was carrying within himself some questions, but the military wouldn't address it. They didn't want to have an open dialogue, no transparency. So I think we can't necessarily look at Bradley Manning outside of the context of the organization. And so Phil Zimbardo, that we're going to be talking about next, talks about, oftentimes the military wants to say, well, this is one bad apple. But it isn't necessarily a bad apple. It's, in fact, a bad barrel. The barrel has problems. And until we start addressing that in a timely fashion, we're going to see these things unfolding.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I mentioned Ellsberg, too, because back then, Ellsberg was seen as a hero. He told us about what was happening in Vietnam, and people wanted to know what their government was doing. They said, oh my God, they were outraged. Now when Bradley Manning or WikiLeaks tells us what our government is doing, people are like, oh, what's the matter with you? Why are you telling us?
Look, very inconvenienced by it.
Very inconvenienced. And so to one of Patrick's point too, and Madar mentioned it there, Thomas Drake, he was a whistleblower at the NSA. Now, not only was he whistleblowing about what the NSA was doing wrong, illegal, et cetera, but he said, look, they're actually wasting a ton of money. And the reason that they're wasting all that money is working on an inefficient spying program when there's a more efficient spying program is because of contracts that and the influence that those contracts have, to the point you were making about Fruit of the Loom, et cetera, right? And so this is a guy who's trying to help the government save money, even spy better in some sense, but also do it in the right ways, protecting people's rights. And they brought down a world of pain on him, charged him with the Espionage Act, as if he was selling secrets to the Soviets, right?
He's working at an Apple store right now. There's probably somebody in Maryland, like, looking at an iPod in an Apple store, like, watching this right now, going, hey, that's you. They're talking about you right now. So, Tom, hey, hi.
Right.
So I'm really sorry you're selling fucking, iTouches and shit. I don't know.
So, by the way, amazing story. Eric Holder actually went into that, coincidentally, went into that Apple store.
Right.
And Thomas Drake, who's now like selling at a freaking Apple store.
Right.
And he's not like a manager. He's just like, hey, can I sell you this iPhone?
He's just a dude in one of those matching shirts. And Holder's like, how do I put my poker face on here? And he's like, fuck you. How come I'm working here? Like, I used to have a desk and shit.
But not only that, but Thomas Drake.
We don't even have registers here. This is embarrassing. All right, I'm sorry.
But seriously, Thomas Drake was the guy who was right. He was the one that was correct about which program they should have used at the NSA. And for being right, he was crushed. By the way, what happened with Eric Holder? As soon as Thomas Drake came up and tried to speak to him, ran for the hills.
He ran away.
Of course.
So, which is why he's watching this on a Zune. Fuck you, Eric Holder, and your Zune.
I think we should give Thomas Drake some credit because he'd identified the Trailblazer as a $1.2 billion program. And he actually thought that it had too many invasions of privacy. And to put numbers to your support, he actually liked the thin thread, $3 million. 1.2 billion, $3 million. And we know what happened next.
That's last thing here, because that's exactly why they threw him out.
Exactly.
Because they wanted to spend more money. They wanted to spend the $1.2 billion because it's crony capitalism. Because people are going to get rich off of that, then they're going to funnel some of that money to the people running the NSA when they leave the NSA and get hired by those companies. And the politicians who fund those programs are going to get some of that back in campaign contributions. Who the hell wants to do an efficient spying program for only $3 million? No. Right?
Well,
and that's why they ran him out of town. Finally, on that, it's interesting because I know that the prosecution, et cetera, was started under the Bush administration, but President Obama has actually charged more people with the Espionage Act than the rest of our presidents combined. Okay, whistleblowers that he's charging with. So I think the secrecy is totally run amok. All right, now we want to get your opinions on what we just discussed, so leave your comments below, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Philip Zimbardo and his project to make heroes out of all of us. Can he really do it? Yeah, maybe. We're back on The Point, and next we're going to discuss Philip Zimbardo and his Heroic Imagination Project. He is a professor at Stanford University, incredibly famous. He did the Present Study, which almost everybody studies if they take psychology in college. And now he's trying to make heroes out of all of us. Here's his point.
Hi, I'm Phil Zimbardo. I'm a professor emeritus at Stanford University in the psych department, having taught there for more than 40 years. I am the president and founder of the Heroic Imagination Project, which I want to talk to you about today. And I'm the author of The Lucifer Effect, Understanding How Good People Turn Evil. My point today is I need your help to enable me to create a new generation of everyday heroes. Do you think it's possible for an ordinary person to become a hero? I do. Obviously, there are a lot of definitions of heroes. In fact, in recent times, the concept has been degraded to be any celebrity, any popular person, popular media, any sports figure. Heroes are people who, usually ordinary people, who take extraordinary action on their own to oppose injustice incivility, and evil. And they do it without expectation of reward. And in addition, what makes somebody a hero and not just an altruist is you are aware of the personal cost to life or limb, cost to career if you're a whistleblower. So it's not easy to be a hero, but in fact, there are unsung heroes everywhere, every day, doing noble deeds, mustering the moral courage to stand up, speak out, and do the right thing when people all around us are doing the wrong thing. The interesting thing is there's almost no research on what makes somebody a hero. So we believe that adopting a mindset, a heroic imagination, thinking of yourself as a hero in training, and doing little deeds each day which are focused on helping others in small ways, builds up the moral courage to be able to do a big deed when the challenging situation arises. So I'd love to have you visit our website, heroicimagination, one word, .org, and see if there's some way you could help us achieve this, really a social revolution, in which we think people of all ages, genders, backgrounds, can become everyday heroes. And that means standing up, speaking out, taking action against injustice, against bullying, against fraud, whenever they face a challenging situation. Thanks.
All right, Shari, I want to start with you here. Do you think that there is a wrong way to define hero, or is our society doing that? What's your take on it?
Let me come at this a different way.
Okay.
It was 1970 at Stanford University, and Phil Zimbardo was teaching social psych. He comes into Dinkelspiel Auditorium, he stands up on the stage, and he tells 175 people, we don't have a textbook yet because we don't know enough. And during the next 4 years, he himself went on to become one of the central people in making of the history of social psychology. He ran the prison study. For those of you who don't know about it, kids were randomly assigned, college-age kids, to be prisoners or guards. Random assignment. And he was the warden. Interestingly enough, within 3 days, the prisoners were demoralized, they were playing the role. The guards became increasingly abusive. And Phil says he became increasingly encouraging of those abusive behaviors. The guards wore shiny glasses, had batons, and by day 6, they had kids trying to appeal to get out of prison, and they'd had nervous breakdowns, broke out in a rash all over his body. And at that point, a real heroine came in. And she came in and she saw what was happening, and she looked at Phil and she said, "What are you doing to these boys?" That was Christina Maslach. And in that moment, Phil says he knew he had to stop the study. Well, it went further than he ever thought. So when he talks about turning us all into heroes, he knows what it was like to be a villain and how easy it is to fall into being a villain. And in fact, that's the whole power behind the power of situations.
So one of the things I got out of this is how little we study things and how little we learn from the studies that we do have. So for example, I remember reading that, God knows how many years ago, when I took Psych 101 in college, right? And I thought, well, obviously we're going to learn from that. I mean, that's an amazing study, and it shows clearly what human nature is. So they must be studying this and applying the lessons from it in prisons all across the country. Can you imagine how profoundly naive I was? Right? Like, we have learned nothing from this amazing study. And so, I despair because I think, like, are we ever going to learn anything? Are we ever going to apply it?
We have learned. It's that we don't apply it. The prisons are overcrowded. We have 3 times as many prisoners in the same space. The irony of what Phil is doing, the other book that he has is called The Time Paradox, because he looks forward in time. So he's got the Lucifer Effect, because we're all vulnerable. And it's called the inoculation. Once you understand we're all vulnerable to becoming a guard-like person, to becoming evil, the Lucifer Effect, at that point we are freer to make a decision to do the right thing. And it happens in little ways.
So how do we do it, guys? That's the question. Because I think the fact that Professor Zimbardo is right is indisputable.
Okay.
Because he chose the prisoners and the guards at random.
Right.
And then it was supposed to last 2 weeks, as you were saying. It lasted only 6 days. Because the guards became so fierce.
Yes.
And the prisoners so weak and bowed down, etc., that it's obviously inside all of us to be able to go to one direction or the other. So he's saying, hey, why don't we learn from that and push everybody in the direction of doing good? Right. And so can we do that? How would we do that? How would we teach that? Should we teach it at school?
Well,
Okay, I'm getting an affirmative from Shari.
I got to be honest. I'm a little out of my pay grade here. I write butthole jokes for a living. I brought a book about buttholes, but it's out in my car. But
it's in your butt.
But it's in my butt. But you know, I haven't the foggiest idea. I haven't the foggiest idea if we can teach people to not be assholes to each other. I mean, people who have power are often bad to people who don't have power. But Shari says it's possible. So I'm going to listen to Shari.
So how do we do it then?
Everybody has the possibility to go angel or devil, Lucifer Effect.
Right.
It happens in little ways. And so I brought something to help us all begin the path. Take your pick. They are, in fact, everyday hero bracelets. Sorry, I can't talk. And if you put one on, take your pick. You want...
I'm taking the Hulk green.
Okay.
Hulk smash!
That's actually
Smash
camo,
bullying.
camo jungle. And this is camouflage desert.
Okay, now why the camouflage? Explain this to me.
It goes partly
with your Prada.
It goes partly with the military, and it goes partly with because we're all heroes in camouflage. And it is better
that's pretty
if
good.
you wear this. As you walk around, it's little things every day, whether it's letting that person come into traffic, whether it is opening the door for someone following you, whether it is giving a nice greeting to someone who's helping you. Those little things add up, and we will change the culture with the little things. We are such an individualistic, selfish culture.
We lack kindness. We don't smile at strangers.
Right.
We don't. I mean, when I open the door for somebody and they don't say thank you, I am appalled. And then I usually say you're welcome, even though they don't say thank you. But we're so narcissistic and we're so focused on ourselves and our troubles. I mean, anytime you see something happen to somebody else, a homeless person asks you for $1 and you're getting off the bus, you're like, I just got off the bus. I need that $1. You always compare your circumstances versus putting yourself in their shoes.
That's the key.
Look, I got her.
That's the key.
Right.
Put yourself in someone else's shoes. Imagine how they came to be there. Be in their skin.
All right, but guys, let me ask you this, right? So what you're saying makes perfect sense. I'm in. I am already really great at the little stuff.
Okay.
The bigger stuff, it's a little hard. But like, I get in an elevator. What floor would you like to go to? I'm your, elevator guy.
A hero, right?
Yeah, that's right. Okay. You know why? Because I'm great at little tiny favors. But I figure maybe they add up one day, and I'm pleasant to the people that I talk to every day. Am I not merciful? Okay. All right. Now. The thing is, do you teach it, right? So part of me says, yeah, I mean, who cares about, physics? Because I hated physics. And it's very relevant, I know. Okay, but shouldn't we teach people
Another
to be...
rocket crash today, but another 10% increase in heroism.
I see where you're coming from.
But on the other
it's
hand...
not just in your classroom, it's in your home. Like, I had a father that that owned his own business. He had an insurance business, and he'd get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he'd go work his day job. He'd come home, he'd kiss me to bed at night, and then he'd put on an apron and go stock groceries until it was time to take me to school the next morning.
Lord mercy.
And that was my hero. Because he didn't sleep, he busted his butt, and he was my hero. I think it's taught within the home. I think we need to, I think it's something that we need to encourage the way that we're talking about right now. We need to encourage people to teach this at home, start it at home. It doesn't necessarily, I think we're gonna have to fight to get it in a classroom. I'd love to see it in a classroom.
I think a lot of people might be worried about indoctrination, though. I can see people flipping out about that. Oh, no, you can't do this or not. I don't know, I feel like it's the most important lesson we could teach people.
Well, visit the website at Heroic Imagination. They have several videos there, little clips, and they also have an educational program that they're developing. And they're the kinds of things that the curriculum is just put yourself in the position. The main issue comes down to the bystander effect. That's one of the first. And that's when we see something disturbing, most of us look the other way. But we don't need to. As a matter of fact, the factors are pure social psychology of whether we look the other way or whether we help. And once you understand the bystander effect, once one person starts to help, everybody else helps. So I can tell my own hero story. I was driving up the 5 on the way to San Francisco in an old car, and For must have been 10 to 15 minutes, there were flames coming out of the back of the car. I had just gotten a new catalytic converter. There must have been 200 cars that went past me. And I'm driving along thinking, gee, it smells a little odd.
I love Lady Gaga.
Well, you may be. I was talking to a friend, and all of a sudden, this car of young guys go like this to me. And I'm like going, what? They looked terrified. I knew something was wrong. I pulled over. These 4 guys hopped out. I'm going to show you their picture because were it not for they,
prepared.
She is so prepared.
I
She
would
came
have
with goods.
been a charcoal briquette on the 5. My car blew up in 5 minutes. And yes, I know what his T-shirt says.
That's why he's a hero to me.
All right.
All right, you know, that's funny because a long time ago, since I'm an idiot, I ran out of gas on the turnpike, in the New Jersey Turnpike, right? And I'm like, geez, what am I gonna do? I'm screwed. I don't know where a gas station is. And somebody who was even on their way to work stopped, pulled by, drove me all the way to another exit, which is a long way away, got gas, brought me back. And it's amazing. And I thought, I'm gonna do the same for someone else. And I have not done it yet.
Well, but I don't. I think
Day is
that's,
coming.
that's more common though than. I mean, do you remember the story in China where that 2-year-old baby was run over twice and literally 18 people walked past her as she moaned and sobbed in the street, and finally the 19th person dragged her out of oncoming traffic. More common than not, people do look away, and they called that woman a good Samaritan, and I remember being like, that woman is not a good Samaritan, she's a hero. Are you trying to tell me that like 18 people are bad Samaritans?
Yeah.
Because more common than not, people aren't going to inconvenience themselves and help you out.
All right, I gotta ask you guys this one last question, which is this ever? Are we ever gonna learn? Is this ever gonna work? So, for example, there's another great psychologist working on the Happiness Project, and they have figured out some things that definitively make you happier. So, for example, if at the end of the day you remember
French
3,
kiss.
and plus what the guy had on his T-shirt, right? But if you remember
This right here, this guy's happy.
if you remember 3 things that went well for you that day, and you just all you got to do is think, okay, this went well, like I had a good sandwich, whatever it is, simple things, right? That's the one thing that's been proven to definitively make you happier, but no one ever does.
Right.
Oh, but they do. They do. Half of the kids who were in that original study were doing it 6 months later. Why? Because they felt better. And because they felt better, they were able to do more things. It's Barbara Fredrickson's research. Awesome.
So
Keep doing
Shari's
it.
unquestionably the optimist. There's no question about that.
She is very excited.
Okay, so Patrick, are we ever going to learn? Is there going to be a time 180 years from now when we figured out how to be heroes and how to be happy and stop abusing people and etc.?
My sort of general philosophy of evolution is that like the assholes die and their kids are slightly less assholes, but then they die and then their kids are slightly better. And like bigotry, same thing, So yeah, we're assholes, but we'll die. But our kids will be slightly better, but they'll still be assholes, but they'll die, and eventually we'll get to the right generation of not jerks. I'm sorry, Shari.
Slightly less optimistic. All right, Kinsey, you get between the spectrum of the really
Should
dark.
I throw in the word butthole real quick? I wanna
It always
keep it
helps.
It's the internet. You're allowed to. You're wasting this opportunity if you don't say butthole.
I feel like I'm a huge believer in the law of attraction, and I think that if you put out good energy, that good energy will come to you. And so I do think that we can change. We can be a happier society, and just give hugs and love.
All right, what do you guys think? Are we ever going to make it? Are we ever going to learn? Are we going to be able to be more heroes? And as he explains, of course, Philip Zimbardo does, it's a bell curve. There are people who are born heroes who are more likely to do it. There are people who might be born villains. But the great majority of us are in the middle, and we can learn to go to the one side rather than the other. So you tell us what you think, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Avengers and the possible secret political messages within the movie.
Buttholes.
We're back on the point. I'm given to understand that the movie Avengers is doing fairly well in the box office, in the $1 billion club already. We've all seen it here, of course, and it was a fun movie, unquestionably. The question is, was there any political messages within Avengers? Kinsey, go.
Okay, I will have to admit that I went in seeing this film with this question on the brain, so I feel like it might have disrupted my experience. But I absolutely saw a little bit of political, whether with it being Chris Evans, who I might marry inevitably. You know, he's Captain America, and he just doesn't understand why everybody's fighting from within the Avenger team, Thor, the Hulk. I can see it kind of being like our government arguing within, you know, themselves instead of fighting for us and fighting with each other. So that's kind of what I took from it, but I thought it was a great film.
You know, I like Captain America. He's heroic, he's patriotic, etc. He's old school, but he's also a little dense. He's like, why is Hulk fighting the others?
Yeah.
He's frickin' Hulk! Of course he's gonna fight the others. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's in a goddamn rage. Anyway, Patrick, did you get any political messages out of it?
No, not really. What I got out of it was that, like, is this Bruce Banner going to be the Bruce Banner from here on out? Because after the last two, like, I can't be hurt again, you know, if they're going to keep taking them away. So,
Well, do you think Ruffalo did a good job there?
He was fine. I thought Ruffalo was fine. He was appropriately rumpled and, you know, sort of was doing this sort of, like, you know, Christopher Reeve, like, oh, sorry, Lois, thing that, but truthfully, like, I did not see it with this question on the brain, and I did not walk out going, well, what a political movie that was. And then when I heard that we're going to be talking about it, I thought about it, and, like, I really don't see it. Like, truthfully, like, I get the idea, like, oh, they're trying to go for clean, sustainable energy, you know, and apparently that's like a liberal thing, but it's kind of crazy that that should count as, like, liberals, everybody should be interested in clean, sustainable energy. That shouldn't be the province of any one political viewpoint.
Hippie.
No, I'm serious. There's nothing, like, anti-conservative about the idea of, like, you know, it's a fairy tale anyway, so who cares? But like,
I will admit, every time I see like a hybrid car, I'm like voted for Obama.
possible.
Oh,
I do think that.
Very possible, but anyway, like, but on the other hand, like, you know, ultimately the whole problem was solved with, like, force and violence, and, you know, and a nuclear missile actually is what saved the day that went off in space. So, like, I don't know.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, everyone. The Avengers win.
What are you doing? You're giving it away.
So, no, I don't think that it leans to the left any more than it leans to the right. It's just a popcorn.
So, you know, I got the sense, like, some movies I walk out and go, wow, that was political. Avatar, that was the first thought I had.
Yeah.
God, I mean, it was such a lib movie, which I'm a lib, so God bless, right? So, and Hunger Games, I thought, was actually really interesting political message. I didn't get a political vibe out of this movie, but now that I've read 18 articles about how political it was, I was like, okay, I kind of see both sides. Yeah. I see the clean, sustainable energy. I see that violence solves all the answers, et cetera. Shari, where did you get out of it?
All right, so I'm a huge Joss Wheaton fan, huge. So I started with Buffy, went to Angel and Firefly, and this movie is awesome because I see a really good hero message in it, and that's that all the heroes had clay feet. They each had some vulnerability, except maybe Captain America. Maybe he's the one to marry. But the ultimate goal was that they worked together. It was teamwork that ultimately won. And I don't think that's political per se, but I think it's a wonderful social message. 3 cheers, Josh.
I hear you, but listen, Hulk does not have any vulnerabilities. I know he flies into a rage, and that's not the guy you want to settle down with. I get it, right?
It's the one we're attracted to.
Maybe.
But it actually, the thing that bothered me most, forget the politics of it, was I'm like, well, you can't defeat the Hulk. No. If you fire at him, he gets stronger. Well, then what's the point of the movie? Because Hulk can destroy anything. I mean, the baddest ass aliens in the universe come in with their freaking worm alien ship, and Hulk's like, Hulk smash bomb! Okay. So anyway, back to the politics of it. You know, as you look at this, Kinsey, the person who wrote for Alternate, Julianne Escobedo-Shepherd, thought that Loki was like Paul Ryan, that he was irrationally, you know, saying like less is more. As Paul Ryan says, we're going to cut the spending and you're going to somehow get more services or something. And he's saying, I am going to, you know, give you freedom by taking away your freedom. Is it a stretch to say Loki's Paul Ryan or a Republican?
I would like have to get back to Chris Evans. No, I didn't get that at all, and I actually read that and thought that she needed maybe a nap or something, that she was just stretching.
I agree. I agree. He was Hitler, right? So much so that like they even like it was obvious, right? Like the old guy in Germany is like, we get people like you, and like so we get it. Like, all right, he's Hitler, but then like it's like, oh, Joss Whedon remembers. Oh yeah, some of the people in my audience are morons. So then Captain America has to show up and say, there was a guy like you here, and he was Hitler. Like, we get it. We already know what you're doing. So
Did you not like the movie?
I thought the movie was fine. I thought the movie was fine. It's like, oh no, Avengers, look out! The weakest Avenger has been like gone over to the dark side. Again, spoiler alert. The weakest Avenger has gone over the dark side. What are all of us other like much stronger Avengers gonna do without this weak Avenger who no one else has seen or cares about? Like, oh, I hope we can defeat him. Well, yeah.
All right, how about jingoism? I mean, was it, so the aliens invade, who's going to save the day? Of course, Americans.
Sure.
Duh. That's how we roll.
Yeah, but on the other hand, it would have been kind of weird if randomly it was the Chinese.
Yeah.
Like,
Good point. That would have been so inappropriate.
and now Yao Ming! And he's like, oh, Yao smash! Okay, it would have been fun. Government was lying throughout the movie. The fury was that they always do, etc. Is that political at all?
Well,
Can I get anyone to bite on this?
That had no impact whatsoever, right? Because it was like a reveal. Again, sorry, spoiler alert, internet. It was like revealed, like, wait a second, you're using this thing to make weapons? And Nick Fury's like, yeah. And they're like, oh, we're mad about that. And he's like, oh, that's too bad. And they're like, all right, now let's go beat those aliens. Like, it had no impact whatsoever. Like, they kept, I'm sorry.
Wait, can I please get the feminism question? Because I wrote out something really funny about it.
Hey, you know what, Kinsey? Can you tell me about the feminist point here?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I would like to say, if the question was addressed to me as, is The Avengers a feminist movie? My response is only in the sense that I wanted to make out with each and every one of its cast members, including Scarlett Johansson. Boom! Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
All right, now let's get serious for a second. Scarlett, really?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
wouldn't.
good.
I don't even think I need alcohol in my system.
Oh, all right, that's
Yeah.
cool. How would you start with dancing, or would you be on a couch?
I feel like it would go from a game of Twister to the Hokey Pokey, and then a little tonsil hockey.
All right, now we're having a conversation. All of a sudden, we got a show on our hands. Okay, but that is a real issue. People are talking about Scarlett Johansson's talking about it, and she's proud that that Wheaton creates more strong feminine characters, and she's smart in the movie, etc. But in the movies posters, every one of the guys is facing like, Captain America, sick your lawn, right? All this stuff. And she's facing the side so you can see her butt.
So you see her
Thank
butt,
God.
you see her
Right.
boobs, and she's got a gun. Like, that's, I mean, to be even halfway serious, like, in so much in movies today, like, what counts as like a strong female character is somebody who acts like a man. Like,
Oh, that's interesting.
What counts? Scarlett Johansson's character, whose name I don't even remember now, like
Black Widow.
Oh, Black Widow, is strong because like she can fight and like shoot and like do flips. Like, oh, like a dude, like.
I feel like rather than feminism, it's racism, because Black
Oh,
Widow,
really?
like, honestly, really
that's a good
unnecessary.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, no, that's not a good point. All right, and then finally, are any other characters, like one article talked about how, Stark, who's Iron Man, is obviously a libertarian. Captain America is obviously conservative. Hulk is obviously liberal because he's green.
Racist.
Right, there you go again. Any validity to that, or just people are grasping at straws here? My English teacher in 11th grade, whenever I try to do too much symbolism, would do this like,
Yeah.
you're stretching, you're stretching. Is it
stretching.
all a stretch?
Somebody pointed out to me once that, like, if you watch the A-Team, every single one of them is like a character of a family, and BA is the mom because he's like, "Come here, little buddy," and I think that like that has at least as much validity, that BA is like the mom in A-Team than any of the Avengers stuff.
I love the internet, but I think that's my least favorite part of the internet, that everybody is allowed to have an opinion, and some of the opinions, they're just thinking, how can I be so ridiculous that I get hits to this one article? And so I thought that this was just kind of a ridiculous topic.
All right.
I also hate all the porn on the internet that's not the porn that I like. It's between me and the porn that I want to get to. Get out of the way, other porn.
Patrick, smash! Okay, all right, well, it has been a fun ride. Okay, so I want to thank everybody who was involved. First of all, is Chase Madar, who's written The Passion of Bradley Manning, for sharing his point about government secrecy. Philip Zimbardo, who's doing the fantastic work on Heroism. You should check that out. And I guess Wheaton for doing the Avengers, which he's going to make an insane amount of money from, so I think he's all right. And I want to thank everybody here. Patrick Meighan, of course, is a writer for Family Guy, and you guys are doing all right, so we don't have to plug that anymore. All right, Shari Kuchenbecker is not only assistant professor at Chapman University, but everybody check out her book, Raising Winners, A Parent's Guide to Helping Kids Succeed on and off the Playing Field. I want to check that out. We should talk about that later. And Kinsey Schofield, of course, is a correspondent for Young Hollywood. So tell us about that. What can we look forward to in Young Hollywood?
Well, you can look forward to a behind the scenes of this show right here.
Stop.
And you should subscribe to the Young Hollywood Network, because we're talking to A-listers all the time about things like the Avengers and making out with Scarlett Johansson.
All right. And now we're having a conversation.
That's right.
All right.
Listen to
Thank you
subscribe.
so much, all of you, for participating in The Point.